All right, welcome to the Ergogenic Podcast. You're here with your host, James. This episode, we have a very special guest for you guys, the one, the only, Vince Del Monte here. So, Vince, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So, what we'd like to do is first ask you about, how you got into the fitness industry, how you broke into it, a little introduction about yourself.
So my father was a long-distance runner, so he introduced my brothers and I to the world of long-distance running at a very early age, and that's where I earned my nickname Skinny Vinny, and I got very good at running. I pretty much found my identity in running. Became pretty good in high school and university. In high school, I also got into triathlon. I competed at the national level, went to the world championships. I had a lot of success with triathlon. And my whole world was endurance sport. So if I could have made my skinny genetics any worse, I certainly did with over 10 years of endurance sport. At the University of Western, I got a degree in exercise science. And, like all students, you have to figure out what you want to do with yourself after university. And my intention was to be a high school phys ed teacher. That was the only thing I could see myself doing. I missed my cutoff by 1% and decided to go into a different direction, and that was the fitness industry. So the fitness industry literally changed my life, and one of the reasons I was interested in the fitness industry and the world of personal training and building muscle and losing fat and body transformation was, to be honest, quite superficial initially. I was living at the time in university with 8 guys who all happened to be jacked up. And I was the skinniest guy in the house. And when I'm telling you, these guys were jacked up, I'm not kidding. These are all natural guys, but these guys were the guys wanted to be and the girls wanted to be with. And these were the guys I lived with. I became friends with them. So there was muscle around me constantly. And that rubs off on a young guy. You see what the muscle brings you. I mean, these guys were confident. They had girls around them all the time. And they were, the life of the party. And I associated that with their muscle. So after university, I always had this fascination with getting into the gym and transferring all the efforts I'd once put into my running into the gym. I was just curious. It started off as a curiosity. I thought to myself, what could I do if I stopped running and put the same discipline, the same work ethic, and learned how to lift weights? And what could I do with my body? Could I gain muscle? So that's where it started for me. The second part to how I got into the fitness industry was that I was pursuing a career in the fitness industry as a personal trainer, but I didn't look like a personal trainer. I was still Skinny Vinny, and nobody wants to hire an unfit looking dude, especially when he looks weak and like he can get blown around by the wind. So I was very motivated to transform my own physique out of curiosity and to essentially create a platform that I could use to build a career. And that was all back at the age of, that happened all between the ages of, I got into the fitness industry at the age of 22, so for about 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. That's a great introduction there of how you initially started this whole thing. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got to become a pro fitness model or pro fitness athlete there? And for a lot of our listeners, how would they even go about that? Like, how do they get to a show?
For sure. So a couple questions there. How did I get into it? I actually saw one of my roommates compete. And it was in Toronto with Fame, and he did this fitness model show, and he was up on stage with like 60, 70 guys, and this was 3 years after I transformed my body, and I was in the fitness industry, so I was curious. As a former athlete, you always get the competition bug, and I thought to myself, what's the point of lifting these weights if I'm not, it's nice to go to the gym, but at the heart, I'm an athlete, so I saw my friend compete. That kind of sparked the bug, and I competed the next year in the same show. And for guys who are interested in competing, I'll be honest, there's nothing to it. I mean, it's really just finding an organization that's close to where you live, going to their website, signing up, and booking the date, ensuring you give yourself enough time to prep. The first few shows I did them about 90% on my own. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a really good coach until when I got my pro card, go figure. And that's how I got into the fitness modeling. So for me, I use the fitness shows as a way to be honest, improve my business. I wanted an awesome set of before and after pictures because I was warned with these fitness shows. I mean, every guy I talked to was disappointed after they did the show, despite looking amazing. Every guy, I mean, I'm telling you, if you go to a fitness show, everybody's a crybaby after the show. Everybody thinks they should have won. Everybody says that there was politics. Everybody says the show was rigged. Everybody said, you know, if this or this, if this. I'm like, guys, this is a subjective show. So like, if you can't take criticism, fitness modeling, bodybuilding is not for you because it's a subjective competition. It's not like a running race. If you're in 20th spot and you're not happy with your position, you know, you can start running harder and pass a few guys and finish 15th. If the judges don't like you, that's it. Tough luck. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, fitness modeling especially because it's pretty much I mean, the best looking face and the best looking abs wins. Nobody's ever lost a fitness model show for small calves. You know, or small legs as a matter of fact. So fitness modeling is all about having a good looking face and great abs. It's an ab show. So, you know, I mean, you'll see guys with shredded abs, but they're not that great looking and they don't place well. So it's like, you just kind of have to know what you're getting into. You know, bodybuilding, I mean, you could be an ugly dude, but you're the most jacked up guy on stage and you win the show because they're not judging your face, they're judging your body parts. So fitness modeling, it is what it is. I encourage people, if they want to do it, to watch a few shows, I mean, you just go on YouTube and, you know, Google search or YouTube search WBFF World Fitness Model Championships, and there'll be a ton of videos. And you can see what you got to do on stage because most guys have great physiques, but they don't know how to show them. And that was something really new to me. It's one thing to pose and look good in front of the mirror with your iPhone and post it on Facebook. It's a completely other thing to be able to go on stage, hold your body in a way that accentuates all your definition, yet it doesn't look like you're trying. It looks like you're, you know, in a club, strolling around, the coolest cat, in the bar, and every single muscle in your body is popping, but it doesn't even look like you're trying. You're smiling, you're having a good time, and those are the guys that win the show. So if you truly want to get good at the fitness modeling, if you want to get your pro card, you gotta be prepared to learn all that. And I'll be frank, I hate that stuff. The posing, walking around the stage, holding those, silly quarter turns. It's just not me. And if you watch, now that you've heard this interview, you can probably see, yeah, Vince doesn't look fully comfortable. So the guys that do it flawlessly, I mean, it really is, just lots and lots and lots of practice. And if you're not prepared to do that, don't expect to do well in the fitness model shows. You'll have a great set of pictures, no doubt, and all your friends will say, you should have won, but you didn't do what they're actually looking for as well. So it's not just a physique show, it's a modeling show. So there you go.
Thanks. I think a lot of those aspects you touched on, like the the preparation, the posing, holding those positions, are things that people don't think about when they think about shows like that, like all that background work. So that gives our listeners a lot of good background info to get into it, and some great info right there. One thing we want to also ask too is, with that comes, the concept of exercise and training, and those training principles that you go by that obviously got you to where you're at. Could you tell us a little bit about the training principles that you live by as a coach? When you train someone, what kind of underlying things do you fundamentally have in those programs?
Well, the first thing by far is tension. Learning how to create tension within a muscle. My business partner, my coach, IFB Pro Ben Pikowski, and I, we always say it doesn't matter how many reps you can do if they all suck. So when it comes to hypertrophy, we'll talk about hypertrophy. Tension is the language you must speak when you lift. Another way to phrase this is control is the currency of growth. So if you can't control the weights, you have zero business touching those weights. So you have to learn how to create maximum tension in your muscles. One of the first things I teach students, and we teach this in all of our programs, is how to create tension before you even initiate any movement. So when you're at the gym tomorrow, think about creating tension in your lats before you start pulling down. With your bicep curls, think about creating tension in your biceps before you even start to curl. When you're doing your bench press, before you even start to press up, think about contracting your pecs. So essentially, a neat way to think of it is true bodybuilding is contracting against resistance. As opposed to what most guys do when they go to the gym. I call it ego building, not bodybuilding. And, they're weightlifters and they're lifting weight. They're not building their body. And they're just concerned, maybe not consciously, but maybe because from, what they've seen other people do on, horrendous YouTube videos or in the magazines or whatever it is, lift like what I call football players. Most guys lift like football players. They just focus on moving the weight from point A to point B. There's no they're not aware of the function of the muscle they're training, so they don't know how to get it into a maximally short and a maximally lengthened position. And what we know is that muscles are weakest at their extremes. So at the top of a lat pull down, at the bottom of a lat pull down, that's where you're weakest, and most people are only strong in the mid-range of a movement. So, an easy way to explain it is that, by only training in the mid-range of a movement, not training through a full range of motion, essentially a lot of muscle fibers are going untrained. And if a muscle fiber is untrained, it's, I like to refer to it as dormant, it's sleeping, and you're not going to experience your full muscle building potential. So it all starts off with, the basics, learning how to control tension. And, and for most people, what this means is dropping their weights. And, all of our Hypertrophy Max members, they typically say, after the first phase, I'm never going to look at a 10-pound dumbbell the same again. And it's true. So I think that's the first concept that I start, because it doesn't matter who designed the program or how well designed it is or how good your genetics are or, what supplements you're taking or what diet you're following. If you can't create tension, if you can't fatigue the muscle, if you can't create mechanical stress within the muscle, then you're not going to be able to break it down and build it back up. And it's very important that this is the first principle associated with gaining size. I want to just clearly distinguish. If your goal is just to get strong, a lot of the stuff I just mentioned, to be honest, isn't as important. Getting strong, you can get very strong without creating muscle, tension. You can do that by, momentum, acceleration. I like to call it fool's gold. So those are some. That'd be the first principle I would start with a client: tension.
Okay, and that's an important point right there, because we've all seen those people in the gym that they sling around the weights. I like to call it the no curl biceps curl, or the guy who goes down 2 inches with a squat, but he tells all his buddies he does 3-4 plates, right?
Of course.
So that's a very important point there with tension, time under tension, right? And also, too, you probably have to check your ego at the door, like you're saying, because if you're going a little bit slower on that concentric and eccentric, you probably won't be able to do as much weight, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, too. Research shows that the majority of muscle damage occurs during the eccentric movement. And a little simple tip, without getting too complicated with tempos here, but as a general rule of thumb, the eccentric portion of your movement should be slower than your concentric. So if it's taking 1 to 2 seconds to lift the weight, it should be taking at least 3 to 4 seconds to lower the weight. And typically what happens is if you're not following a tempo, a lifting speed like that, your body will figure out how to get the weight up. Your body is not designed to build muscle, it's designed to protect you. It's built out of, it's got an incredible built-in, I guess you could call them protective mechanisms to prevent you from injury. So if you're lifting a weight that is too heavy, your body has a beautiful thing called compensation, and it will figure out how to do whatever that your trainer is yelling to you to do, or your training partners telling you to do, or what you think you should be doing because you saw it in a magazine or watch it on a YouTube video or something, your body will figure out how to do it. If you and I went to the gym and I said, let's start front squatting 2 plates aside, you could probably figure out how to do a couple reps. It'll look really ugly, and there'll probably be no tension in your quads. You probably dump it onto your lower back and your spine and be, everywhere but your quads would be sore the next day. That's what happens when you're not following this principle and when you don't use, a simple technique like tempo within your program. So, we talked about tension, but then the way to apply that would be by, following a tempo. And that doesn't mean you have to bust out the metronome either. A lot of people think it's a complicated, people say, oh, that's distracting. Like, well, what else are you thinking about when you lift? Like, oh, I don't want to think about counting. Well, what are you thinking about in the gym when you're lifting? If you're not thinking about how slowly or the speed you're moving the weight, what else do you want to think about? Like, that's the only thing you should be thinking about, the tempo, the speed of the movement. So, I think it's just an excuse for people not to want to, give their workout a little more detail, a little more attention. So guys that do work with tempos, they're more in control of their results. And the last thing I'll say, just to sell this point and knock it home, is that rarely will you ever meet someone who gets injured. In fact, I'll go out and say this: you will never get injured if you're controlling the weights. It's impossible. If you're controlling the weight, how are you going to get hurt? The only people that get injured or start feeling aches or pains are people that aren't controlling the weights. And that's why we give our students tempos as guides to not just have a better workout, but to have a safer workout. I want to be lifting when I'm in my 40s and 50s. And unfortunately, here's the truth. If you go to the gym, most guys are doing more harm, and I mean this in the literal sense, to their bodies than good. Like, they're going to go to their doctors when they're in their 40s and 50s and find out they've got advanced arthritis, the joint's been beaten up, and it's too late at that point. When a joint is smashed to bits, it doesn't just repair itself with a few supplements. It's kind of past that point of no return. So I see so many guys in the gym who I'm like, this guy's been training like this for a year. 5-10 years from now, he's going to be paying for his therapist's next vacation.
Yeah, and that's a great point there, especially that safety aspect. So we've all seen people sling around the weights in the gym there, doing more harm than good, bad form. And those are all things to pay attention to, and especially that point of time under tension. If you're looking to build size, lift slower in the eccentric phase of the movement there. Don't just lift weights for everyone else in the gym. Lift for yourself, lift for your body there. So that's a great point. And the opposite side of the coin there is that nutrition aspect. So with nutrition, there's different ways that you can attack guys who are skinny. A lot of times you see the skinny fat thing as well, where you have this skinny guy and he has a gut. And that's like the worst of both worlds. So how would you, for someone like that, attack someone who has either skinny or has a little bit of that skinny fat syndrome?
All right, so I want to get people to start thinking a little beyond the calorie model, because we could do a whole call on this, but I'm a firm believer that the whole calorie model is flawed. It's not where your focus should be. Calories are not created equal. It's not a fact. It's not a function. I will repeat, it is not a function of calories in versus calories out. It goes far beyond that. Hormones is what you want to focus on. And how do we focus on hormones without, getting our blood work done every, few weeks? Well, the way we can do it is by focusing on the quality of our food before we start focusing on the quantity of our food. So, one of the first things I like to teach, students is to distinguish between whole foods, or I guess we could just call them foods, and food products. Sorry, buddy.
No worries.
So food products are things that were found, or sort of that things that were created in, I guess you could say, a laboratory. They were artificially made with a variety of things by geneticists or whoever. And they weren't things you would, caveman would have eaten. Actually, they probably would have, but they weren't around, so they couldn't have. On the flip side, food is something you would find in the wild, so stuff that you could hunt and gather. So this would be essentially the caveman diet. So I'm a big believer in starting off by understanding that your diet should be comprised of primarily 90% food. It's an incredible concept, eh? Food products. So we start off with very basic principles of, staying in the perimeter of the grocery store and focusing on foods that haven't been genetically modified, because, somebody's trying to make more money. So they, compromise the quality of the food with antibiotics and who knows what else. So I think that's where guys need to start. Where's my food coming from? Are the food choices I'm taking in, can I improve them? Before we start counting calories, before we start looking at macros, let's just look at what I'm eating right now. Is cereal the best option for breakfast, or could I replace that with something that's more nutrient dense, something that's going to give me more bang for my buck? And just taking a look at what you're currently doing. And I learn all this stuff, a lot of the stuff I teach in fitness is learned from the business world as well. I always teach my business students, to go after the lowest hanging fruit. And this is the same way you should approach your diet and your training. You look at things that you're currently doing that are easy to change. So, I learned this from Dr. John Berardi. The way he puts it is that when trying to help somebody transform, we want to go for things that create the greatest physiological change with the least psychological resistance. And, this might be as simple as, ensuring someone's measuring their water intake and getting a sufficient amount of water, incorporating fish oils, starting to introduce juicing so that they can start getting their 10 to 15 servings of vegetables a day, which probably 99% of people don't do, which compromises their digestion, their longevity, their vitality, their energy. So they can't even train. They're going to the gym training on like an empty tank. It's a great analogy, So that's where I start. I focus on quality of food, assessing the quality. Once I'm content with the quality of somebody's food choices. Again, 90% of the time, I believe there should be 10% leeway for those nights you want to go out with your friends, for special occasions. When it comes to athletes or guys getting ready for competitions, those people, it's 100%. It's either you're in or you're out. There's no 10%. And it's easy for athletes because they're so committed. But for general people, for most of the year, 90% compliancy will get you incredible results. And that's where I start in terms of nutrition. Once we have that, then we start looking at the calories, we start looking at the macros. But really, you have no business looking at those numbers if you don't have, again, low-hanging fruit pulled off the tree.
Okay, so you first focus on that quality aspect of the food. So you go after, how many fruits and veggies the person's getting in, the quality of the lean meats, what kind of protein they're getting in, making sure they're getting those essential nutrients, omega-3s, and all that. And then you go for that total calorie, bulking, cutting calorie amount.
Yeah. So you asked me about the skinny guy. You asked me about the skinny fat guy. So I believe that someone's going to, again, remember we talked about health at the start. Your body has no interest in building muscle or losing fat. That's your goal. Your body just wants to remain the same. It doesn't want to get sick. So it's going to take care of its basic needs first. So you have to give your body its basic needs. So, before we start looking at all that other stuff, let's get those 10 to 15 servings of vegetables in a day. Let's make sure if we're having 5 meals a day that, we're getting at least 4 or 5 of those from whole foods and maybe 1 protein shake, and make sure that we're rotating around our protein sources and we're not using the same protein source every meal, which is a big mistake as well. You mentioned the fats, which is huge. Fats are very critical for hormones and energy levels. So, rotating around your fat sources as well. And then the thing with carbohydrates, the way I like to teach carbohydrates is that you need to earn them. And, carbohydrates are dictated based on your percentage body fat. For somebody who has more than 10% body fat, I've been known to, people have heard me say that I consider people over 10% body fat. And it's kind of an extreme thing, but I like to set the standard high. It's a great bar to set for yourself. So, people are like, Vince, well, you're not 10%. I know I'm fat right now. You're only 12%. You're not fat. In my opinion, I'm fat if I'm not 10% body fat. So, for someone who's over 10% body fat, carbs only are deserved after you worked for them, after a workout. Obviously, there's individual differences. Some people need a little more than others, but that's the primary principle I would apply to somebody who's got more than 10% body fat. So that would apply to our skinny fat guy. He's going to have very little carbohydrates, and they'll be after the workout, after he's earned them. If he's not progressing at the rate, we'd even assess, the body part he's training, because the truth is you're going to need more carbs after, a leg and back workout than an arm workout. So that's also considered. For people that are less than 10% body fat who want to gain muscle, we're going to give them the carbs they need so that they have energy and to combat their fast metabolism. And we'll plan them. Again, we won't overthink it too much at first, but when I like to take carbs for a skinny guy is during the workout. And there's been, some people disagree with that, but I find it's a really easy time to get in carbohydrates, liquid form, and then an hour after the workout, and then 4 hours after the workout. If my client isn't growing by taking their carbohydrates in at those 3 times, then we'll introduce them approximately 4 hours before the workout. And most guys, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that will get them growing. It'll put them where they need to be so that they start gaining lean muscle mass, which is what we're after, by the way.
Exactly, and that's a good point with the body fat percent thing. I've heard you said 10% is kind of your cutoff right there. I've heard some other trainers say they consider above 8% fat. I've heard 12%, 15%.
So there you go, yeah.
So that's a great point right there to have that initial body fat kind of dictate what you're doing there, and then of course if someone's like overweight, they're trying to lose body fat there, you would go more towards that lower carbohydrate diet versus someone sub 10%.
I mean, we have to kind of put everything in context. So I mean, the truth of the matter is that this answer is going to depend on the individual's deadline. So if a guy comes to me and says, "Hey Vince, I want to get ready for this show. I've got 16 weeks to do it. We're going to see where he is. And to be honest, we're going to give him as much food as possible because we want to maximize his muscularity. We want to give him energy so that he can train hard and build more muscle so that he can increase his metabolism." It starts a beautiful cycle. And we would look how much time he has. And what we would do is we drop his calories as slowly as possible. We would avoid at all costs anything which would be considered an extreme or a jump. So a nice way to look at this is if there was 20 steps, we'd want to take all 20. We wouldn't want to jump from step 1 to step 20 because it's the least shock to your body, and essentially what we're trying to do is coax fat off the body, not starve it off, which results in losing muscle. So if the person has enough time, we would take their carbohydrate intake down gradually. And for anybody who's watching me prepare for WBFF World Championships, this is the approach I took. I started at 227 pounds. I think I was close to 20% body fat. There's pictures on the internet. If you search them, you'll find them. And it's pretty close to 20, maybe a tad less. And over 16 weeks, I dieted down to 195, 4.8% body fat. And you can find those pictures on the internet as well. Just type in a stage shredded status Vince, and you'll see those pictures. And the way I prepared for that show was by slowly cutting. And it was because I gave myself plenty of time. I didn't have to do anything stupid. I didn't have to, back myself into a corner and do cardio for 2 hours a day, which is what most, silly girls do. And, horrible coaches prescribe, unfortunately. But time is your best friend. So that's the secret to getting ready for a show. Give yourself enough time. Now, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Vince, I'm getting married in 4 weeks. And, I've got a hot night out on the town with this, I'm going out with this girl in 2 weeks and, I need to look good." That's when we look at all those extreme techniques. That's where we might look at some fasting protocols. We might do some, double day workouts, and we might start, doing really low carbs and some crazy, some of the more extreme stuff. But the problem is that most people use this as their base. Like, this is what they're trying to do all the time. Like, these, you have to acknowledge these as extreme things. This is an extreme way to get lean. And a great analogy is, what a lot of people do when they're trying to lose fat is, all they really need is a fly swatter, and they pull out a sledgehammer instead. So what happens when you use a sledgehammer to kill a fly? I mean, not only do you kill the fly, but you kill the wall, you knock out the window, and you might even bring the whole house down. And that's what a lot of guys do. They hear all these, these new fads, these new trends. Intermittent fasting, I'm going to try this. Carb cycling, I'm going to try that. Carb backloading, I'm going to try that. These things work for a short period of time. They're very extreme. They're very hard on your body, not just physically, but mentally. And, from my experience of just watching people do this for an extended period of time, they eventually backfire on you. Now, if you're going into the your 4-week cut, knowing this is just a short-term solution, by all means, knock yourself out. But unfortunately, a lot of people take advice out of context. They hear someone on YouTube or on Facebook say something, and they don't have a broad enough frame of reference to see that, what they're actually making that suggestion, who they're making that suggestion for. So whenever you're listening to anybody's advice, you always have to ask yourself, does that apply for me? Is that my goal? So, that's what we teach at Hypertrophy Max, how to be smart, how to ask questions, and, how to make sense of things so that it works for you. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and that's definitely some great points with the nutrition aspect of all that. And intertwined with nutrition is obviously sports nutrition or sports supplements. So I was wondering if you can kind of give us a Vince list, thumbs up or down to different things that are out there. I mean, there's a million things out there, but maybe your top ones that you think everyone should be on, or if someone's bulking, they would use this, or cutting, use that.
Okay. I could easily do that for you, James, but what I would prefer to do is get people to think of it a little differently.
Okay.
So there's two things I want people to think about when they're thinking about supplements. I want you to think about, 1, your weakest link, and 2, your current settings. Okay? So your weakest link would be something that is lacking in your diet that needs to be attended to. All right, so if I had a client that came to me and they're getting 200 grams of protein in a day, but they weren't, and let's say they had a protein shake to help them get that 200 grams, but they weren't getting any greens, and let's say this person was on a budget, I would have them come off the protein shake and help them put whatever they can budget into their supplements into a greens drink, because that's their weakest link. They're not getting 10 to 15 servings of vegetables a day, so that's what's going to hold them back. So another way to look at your weakest link is what is holding me back? For somebody who complains of stress or doesn't handle stress well or doesn't sleep well, their weakest link, and most likely they have a magnesium deficiency. So we want to supplement with magnesium for this individual. Somebody who doesn't consume any beef or dairy, we might have them take some CLA to improve their fatty acid profile. Fish oils, when you asked me that question, the first thing I wanted to say was fish oils, because it's perhaps the most important supplement, and it's because every single gene in the human body has a receptor site for fish oils. So that's why when you read research on them, they're linked to practically every single disease, and they're associated with so many benefits. So, two things off the top of my head again, I always look at this as a health thing. Like, if you're not healthy, you're not going to build muscle, because a healthy person can't build muscle. It's just focusing on his health first. So, I would look at an individual's greens intake, and I would look at an individual's fish oil intake. I would start there before we start looking at anything else. Now, in terms of, that was a weakest link, let's talk about current settings. So current settings is going to be determined by, let's keep it really simple. So somebody who lives in Canada where it's cold quite a few months of the year versus somebody who lives in Florida where it's really warm most of the year, the person living in Florida is probably going to struggle more with maintaining their hydration levels, specifically around a workout. So that person may want to supplement with their electrolytes. Now, electrolytes is great for everybody, but they may want to push that closer to the top of their list, because when your muscles are dehydrated, you can't build muscle. When your muscles are dehydrated, you can't burn fat. When your muscles are dehydrated, you're 10 to 20% weaker. So that's critical, or else you're just wasting your time in the gym, or you're not at least investing your time in the gym. So as opposed to somebody who's, in cooler climate all year, electrolytes might not be at the top of their supplement needs. So that's how I look at current settings. And then, we take a look at all sorts of factors. For somebody who's, in a caloric deficit training twice a day, they would benefit from branched chain amino acids because they're breaking down so much muscle tissue, and they need BCAAs to help stimulate protein, rebuild that muscle tissue they break down. So, that person may benefit. We look at all sorts of individual factors. And lastly, a little term that I just came up with this whole big fad on, if it fits your macros, is I've come up with IIFYB, if it fits your budget. Because, the truth is that, some people, some clients come to me and say, Vince, I can spend $400 to $500 a month on supplements, and those guys are easy to work with. Then sometimes someone will come to me and say, Vince, I've got $50 to $100, and that's fine. We can work with that. Don't look at it as a limitation, but it's just we have to be a little more smarter. We have to, pay more attention to your detail, and we've got to just make sure we, pick top quality products, because, I always say the most expensive supplements are the ones that don't work. So, and it's the same thing in business. The most expensive information is bad information. So, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of my thoughts on supplements. I could give you a laundry list of supplements I personally use and why I use them. But when it comes to that topic, I really try to individualize it for the person based on those three things: their budget, their weakest link, and their current settings.
Okay, and maybe we can get you back on to kind of go into that aspect here and go down that list. I really like what you said about, the individual and attacking some of those underlying diet issues first, like the greens, their omega-3 fatty acid intake, where they're located geographically. That's a lot of stuff you don't ever hear about. When you open a Flex magazine or anything like that, I mean, you got a whole bunch of different training stuff in there and supplement companies selling stuff, but you never hear those great points you just brought up.
Right. Well, I'll give you guys something, a little habit everybody on the call should start implementing, and it's probably one of the biggest health improvers, energy boosters, whatever you want to call it. It will certainly translate into faster recovery, better digestion, better absorption, longevity, vitality, and that is juicing. And I'm not talking about juicing with drugs. I'm talking about juicing with good old-fashioned fruits and vegetables, primarily vegetables. I've got no problem with fruit. Fruit needs to be earned, and I prefer fruit in smaller amounts because of the fructose. That's another topic, but juicing vegetables. And just to quickly educate everyone here, a lot of people don't know there's a difference between juicing vegetables and blending vegetables. For example, juicers extract the pulp, so the food, you're in the fiber, so it's literally within your bloodstream, it's in your cells within 15 minutes, and you'll feel like you've got an S on your chest with literally 15 minutes after, a really great greens drink. I actually post them up on my Facebook page all the time, the ones that I drink. And blending, might be with, a blender or a Vitamixer where everything stays intact, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a few hours for your body to break down the fiber and everything else. So it's not in your bloodstream as fast. It might take 2 to 3 hours for you to kind of get that, oh, wow, geez, I feel more alert right now. And I recommend everybody, I mean, the way I start my day is within 15 minutes of waking up is I drink 18 to 24 ounces of juice. You know, and I mix different things in there, everything from kale to tomato to carrots to cucumber to celery to, oh, what the heck is the red one's called? Beets, lemon, lime, pepper, and sometimes put in some Himalaya pink salt. There's so many amazing nutrients and those are just, you know, the vitamins, minerals aspects. I mean, you can start getting into the, you know, the fats and things as well, which is a whole other topic. But starting your day with 18 to 24 ounces of juice, where you get about 8 servings of vegetables in one shot, is perhaps the most underutilized thing by bodybuilders and athletes. And it's so simple to do once you get going. Like when I travel, I wake up and I can tell that I didn't have my juice in the morning. I can tell that I'm like, oh, I'm just kind of, I don't have that natural high. And it's crazy. The more you do it, what you'll find is that your energy lasts longer in the day. Like right now it's 8:26 and I'm so alert right now. You know, I used to cry, you know, some, you know, hear the stories, guys getting tired. I never get tired in the afternoon. I work, you know, work all day. I read, I get my workouts in. I'm never tired. I never take naps. I don't need them. Rarely ever. And I contributed to having these 18 to 24 ounces of greens every single morning. Because I'll say this, some people say, oh, that's just you or whatever. You hear people say that's bro science or whatever. It's not, because you know how I know? When I pull it, and this is how you can test supplements out, guys. This is a little tip. When I pull it, I feel a difference when I don't have it. And when you do have it, your body, like, that becomes your new normal. But when you do cut it, you're like, I'm not recovering as fast. I'm not sleeping as well. I'm sleeping out midway through the day. I'm not as focused. I can't concentrate as much. I'm dragging. I've got more gas. I'm more bloated. I just still feel, you know, I just kind of feel sluggish. Well, that's your body telling you something. You're lacking. So, you know, I know you guys have heard a million times about the protein and all that other stuff. You know, you guys know that. I want to start, you know, I think I'm going to come out with a product actually. It's going to be called Get Juiced Up. And it's going to be just greens recipes, things that guys can make within 10 minutes of waking up, put them back, and it's the best way to start your day. I'm telling you, after you have 8 servings of vegetables in the morning, you're not going to want to eat crap the rest of the day. You're not going to want to have Pop-Tart. You're not going to want to have crappy cereal. You're not going to want to have ice cream. You just, mentally, there's a shift. Something happens. And you'll see for yourself when you start doing it.
Great. That's an awesome tip right there, starting off in the morning with that greens drink. And I know there's a whole bunch of like greens powders out there. I think obviously fresh is better than the packaged stuff, right?
Sure. I mean, you know, I'll be honest. I have greens products in my cupboard, and sometimes what I do with them is after a lactic acid kind of workout, I'll have it after my workout to start alkalizing my body. So right after my workout, I'll have 1 to 2 scoops of my greens powder, because I'm not, I mean, greens are the same, you know, if you take greens out of the fridge, you know, you're not going to let them sit there all day, right? They're going to start to oxidize. So it's the same thing with fruit. If you take an apple out, slice it, and put it on the counter, in about 15 minutes, it'll start going yellow. So with your juicing, you're typically not going to make a juice drink before you go to the gym and just let it sit there for an hour or longer before you drink it. So that's why I wouldn't do a juice drink after my workout. I would use a powdered, you know, like you suggested, a greens powder in those situations. But when I can have it, I mean, a rule of thumb is if you're going to do juicing, you want to have it within 15 minutes of blending it up, or else it starts to oxidize.
Okay, and that's some good info right there, because you're getting that fresh fruit and vegetables right there, like you said, when you're making it versus, you know, it's just sitting out. And if you do get a packaged product, obviously it's sat in that container or whatever for days, weeks, whatever it is. And so we've hit on, you know, training, nutrition, supplementation. Lastly, what I'd like to get into here is kind of if you could talk to us about Hypertrophy Max, your personal website, how people can find it, sign up, and what makes it different than anything else out there. And I want to preface this too with saying that I'm a Hypertrophy Max member myself, and I have a 4-year degree in exercise physiology. And I've learned more from Vince and Ben's series than I have in 4 years of exercise physiology training in terms of training techniques, principles, periodization. And it's been an amazing experience to go through this training program and see what these guys do. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, James. And that was a great little testimonial there. I mean, the truth of the matter is I didn't learn any of this in university either. I mean, we learn about anatomy, we learn biomechanics, we learn, exercise physiology, but I mean, we don't really learn the application standpoint until we start working with clients in the real world and actually start seeing how this plays out. So I can totally relate to what you were just saying. All of my, I guess you could call it, I don't know. I strongly recommend anybody who wants to get in the fitness industry get a degree specifically in exercise physiology so they can learn the anatomy, the biomechanics. That's like your bread and butter. You have to learn that stuff. It's like an engineer trying to do engineering without having a physics background. It's like, what? So you need the background, but then you also need the experience in the real world with real people, and you have to put this stuff into action over time, and you have to measure the results. So Hypertrophy Max, first off, if people got to run, where they can stay in contact with me is via vincedelmontefitness.com. Just join my free newsletter. Go to vincedelmontefitness.com. There's a few free offers floating around on the site. Just pop your email in, and that's the way you can stay in contact with everything that I do. My Facebook fan page is quite active, and so is my YouTube channel, so you're always free to go there. The fan page is Vince Del Monte Live Large TV. And I have a guaranteed reply policy, so if you post a question, you'll get a guarantee. Same thing on my YouTube channel. I have a team that helps me. I don't do that all myself, just so you guys know. So where were we? Hypertrophy Max. So yes, Hypertrophy Max is a 12-month periodized muscle building program. It's curriculum based, which means everybody starts on phase 1. So it's 12 individual muscle building workouts spread out over 12 months, and they are all based on the previous phase. So first, a couple of things on how this is different. What do most guys do? They get a 4-week program, a 6-week program, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what most programs lack is what I call continuity. There's no progression from phase to phase. What they did this month really doesn't matter because it's not connected to what you did last month. So there's no build-up. There's no progression. Is where, an athlete who wants to peak at the Olympics, he wants to run a certain time on a certain date, and knowing how fast he has to run that, he has to design his workouts in a way that prepares him to run that fast on a certain day, 4 years from now, 2 years from now. But it all starts out by knowing where you want to be in 12 months from now. So Hypertrophy Max, where where the first difference is that it's a 12-month program. You're signing up for 12 months worth of workouts that are periodized, that are structured, that are planned, that are built from phase to phase. You can't just pop in and start on phase 6 or 12. You have to start, you get your ass kicked literally if you jump forward. You have to start on phase 1 because it's an escalate, it's like an escalator. So that's the first thing. The next thing we do is that we've looked at the most scientific principles that are related to muscle building, and we've narrowed them down to 6 things. Their tension, which is time under tension, density, lactic acid, frequency, and training volume. Oh, and intensity. And each one of those things are different ways of stimulating your muscles, and we take those 6 principles and we design a program that focuses on a different one of those muscle building variables each month. So 1 month you're doing lactic acid training. The next month you're doing volume training, and that's all preparing you for intensity training, and that's all preparing you for the high frequency phase. So each month you have something new to look forward to, and there's where the psychological advantage comes in, and that was kind of where the birth of the program came from. If you come visit my inbox, the number one question I get, and Ben gets in our email inbox, is what do I do next? Number one question I get, what do I do next, Vince? I just finished No Nonsense Muscle Building. I just finished MI40. What do I do next? So this solves that problem, and you always have a new program to look forward to. And the way the program is structured is, based on some simple principles. We increase our intensity, density over the first 3 weeks, and then we deload every 4th week. So we're going up, then we come down. We go up, and then we come down. And this is how your body continues to super compensate. It's not just like trying to go up, 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 up. There's no athlete in the world that trains like that. And so guys who train like that in the gym are just uneducated, or, they've never had a good coach. So we teach our athletes how to peak every 3rd week. And every week is a build-up for the 3rd week where they set personal bests. They do more than they did in the previous weeks. And then we give them a week to deload and back off on the volume so that their body can experience what's called the training effect. And the definition of the training effect is recovery plus training. It's not just training, it's training plus recovery. So it's a 2-part equation, and it sounds really simple, but again, once you start applying it in application, month in and month out, that's why these guys, we pop up the before and after pictures and people accuse them of steroids. I'm like, guys, that's why they call it a transformation. You're supposed to transform your body. That's the point. So that's the premise of it. Some other cool things about it is that, obviously, I've studied marketing for years. So, we market this program very, very heavily, and we spend half the year, getting it in front of people. So, the benefit of that is that we have a lot of members who sign up every 6 months. And this will be the 3rd time in a row that we've put over 1,000 people into the program. And what's great about this is that you've got over 1,000 people working on the same workout at the same time. So you're doing this together. And that's resulted in one of the most positive, encouraging, and motivational forums I've ever been on. And our forum members tell us that too. So we have this massive community, private members forum, where we literally get on average over 100 posts a day. And this is a paid forum. This isn't a free forum. That's more than most free forums. And it's because people are helping each other. We have a 0 tolerance policy for trolling or know-it-alls or negativity. We don't allow any discussion on steroids in there, and we don't allow any swearing either. So it's a family-friendly environment. People love it. We've only had to ban one person of over 3,000, so it's been great, and it's just an amazing family. So. Between all those aspects, and just the last thing is we ship it to people's front door in the mail, so it's kind of old school. You won't be able to download. You can't find this on the internet. I hate online piracy, so the only people who have access to this program are people that are serious and who value it and pay for it, and it's how we protect the brand, and it's it protects the members' investment as well. It's no fair. You spent your hard-earned money on that program, James. You don't want to see some guy downloading it. So we keep the program hard copy, so it gets shipped to your front door. And guys like that. They get something new shipped to their front door every month. It comes with a 4-hour DVD, 2 to 4 hours. And obviously, Ben is a genius. For anybody who's ever followed his work, watched any of his videos, his YouTube stuff, followed his Facebook posts. He's earned the name, the thinking man's bodybuilder, and he's just the most intelligent guy I've met. For those who don't know, I hired him. That's how our relationship began formally. He was my coach. He helped me get my pro card. I don't know if you know this, but me and him actually went to the same school together, so we knew of each other, and we're both from Toronto, Ontario. So, but we didn't really become, great friends, business partners until after he coached me, and then we decided to put this program together. Because, after I worked with Ben, I'm like, dude, man, you've got to get these workouts out to the world, man. Like, this is like nothing else that's out there. And people don't spend $1,200 a year if it's crap. So, we've got people paying $97 a month if they're doing the pay by, month to month, and we have an 86% retention rate. What that means is that on average, over the 12 months, people stick for 9 months. For those who follow the online business world, people know that you're lucky to have a retention rate of maybe 3 or 4 months for like a $20 a month program. So, I'm tooting my own horn here, but it's something that we're both very, very proud of, and we've busted our butts to create, and we protect like it's our family. So, that's Hypertrophy Max for you, man. I could talk all day, but I'll shut up now.
And that's some awesome stuff right there with the different principles you just went into with the program. I'm actually currently on month 11 right here for our viewers. So we got the DVD right here. We got the magazine.
Why did you tell them instead of them hearing from the horse's mouth?
Phase 1 kicked my butt, so that's the first thing I'll start off with there. Went to the gym, and we're doing some leg abduction exercises first off there. And you never train a lot of the muscle groups in that Phase 1 were like muscle groups you never train, guys. So if you're listening to this, like those the good girl, bad girl machine in the gym, you're training those muscle groups right there, and it will kick your butt. The first month I was like, you're kind of looking at the workout like, okay, that's not too bad. You get in the gym and you do it, and I was just exhausted. And it really shows you those different muscle groups that you don't normally train doing, a guy's workout. Bench press, squats and deads, and some curls for the girls, and they call it a day. You target the muscle groups that you don't normally hit. It's a great workout. I am blasted by the time the workout is done, and it is unlike anything I've ever tried out there. I've tried so many you can find online for free in magazines, pro athlete, pro bodybuilder workouts that, don't really have that long 12-month term you're just talking about. So you guys have that program that's each month focusing on a different model or aspect of hypertrophy. And each month you're getting a new DVD, new magazine that highlights, 1 month you're going to focus on, week to week what you're doing, and it even gives you a calendar in there of what days, how they're laid out, and some great, inside the mindset stories there, and a whole bunch of different other nutrition factors, and plus the supportive community. So that's a big point you brought up there with like the forum you guys have. Like you can go there and you respond, Ben responds, community members respond, and having that support is what really separates the program, I think, too. Like, if you buy someone else's program, you're just getting the program and you're alone.
Yeah.
Whereas with Hypertrophy Max, you're there with thousands of other members. And then plus, too, you guys respond. You just talked about you always reply. That's your policy there. And who else is going to do that for you? A lot of other coaches out there won't do that.
Yeah, I actually got the whole thing here. I wouldn't have. I literally had it sitting right beside me. So can you see that, man?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, so there's the binder. By the end of the year, this is what you'll own. You'll have literally all 12 phases. So it's a 24-page manual plus the DVD, but you probably can't see that there. Anyways. Yeah, they can check it out themselves. But we're pretty proud of it because, there's a lot of content in the magazine every month, and it's all related to the specific phase you're on. And, we got a great team that designs this. So, we're sending you a professional looking product every month. So, you'll see this is our passion. This is our life, man. So you can see it poured into the product. So, anyways, enough on Hypertrophy Max.
All right. So yeah, guys, if you're interested there, check out Hypertrophy Max. Is the website hypertrophymax.com?
Yeah. If they might. I don't know when you're uploading this here, James, but June 30th, the doors will officially be closed. We ship everybody's Phase 1 packages on July 1st, and then we'll reopen December the 18th. 2013. We open up every June and every December for 4 days, and then sometimes we extend it for a little bit for stragglers. But that's it. So if you're listening to this call after June 30th, just join my newsletter, and then you'll get notified when we reopen it. So hopefully they make it in on time.
Definitely, guys. If you're listening to this, get into this program before it closes, because I really cannot tell you guys again how much this program is awesome, how great it is there. And this is coming from a guy with a 4-year degree in exercise physiology.
That's cool.
I'm also, what was that, Vince?
I just said that's cool.
Oh, yeah, and that background, too. Vince has a degree in kinesiology. I'm physiology. I'm a Cooper Institute certified personal trainer. Also work as a biomedical physiologist at a clinic, managing hypobaric chamber flights there. So you're getting some great background information, great recommendations in that program. So lastly, Vince, is there anything that you'd like to, anything else you'd like to say, closing comments here before we end this interview?
Thank you for having me, James. This has been a great call, great questions. I'll just finish how I always finish. I always encourage people to, attach a deadline to your goal. Goals without deadlines are dreams. So if you want to get serious, you got to give yourself a deadline. And, I'm just basically a byproduct of the top 5 people I've been hanging around the most for the past, 20, 30 years. So I want to encourage everybody listening to ask yourself, who are the 5 people I hang around the most? And most likely you'll resemble an average of those 5 people, not just physically, but intellectually, spiritually, relationally, financially, in every aspect of your life. So if you're not happy with where you are, you need to get around a better top 5. You hear what I'm saying? So, my dad used to always tell me, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And there's so much truth in that one statement. And the only reason that I've become successful in my fitness and my business and my personal life is because I constantly seek out people that are smarter than me, mentors, coaches. Sometimes they're free, but oftentimes you got to pay to play. Some of my best coaches were people that literally I had to go into debt for when I wasn't even making any money. True stories. I can tell you, that's a whole nother call. But it was because coaches shortcut your success. And I don't believe you need to learn from your own mistakes. I believe you can learn from other people's mistakes, mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
I'm all about making the most in the least amount of time and maximizing my time and my efforts in the gym with the least amount of time. So I'm always looking for shortcuts in that aspect. And I encourage people to do that. If you're not plugged into a community that's growing, I would say if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no such thing as maintenance, people. So you've got either 2 modes in life. You're growing or you're dying. So if you're not growing, then get around people that are. And this applies to all areas of life, just not your physical. So if hypertrophy is your goal, we've got that already covered. So come join us. We'd love to have you. We'll make you family. And you'll experience incredible gains. So I think that's it.
Well, thanks, Vince. Hopefully we can get you on here in a little bit, maybe a few weeks down the road again here, and maybe even Ben Pekulski you'd like to get on. I'm sure our listeners would love that.
Oh, yeah. And maybe get Ben on for sure.
That'd be awesome to have Ben on. And maybe also, too, I know your wife Flavia does the fitness kind of oriented towards women. Oh, yeah. So maybe we could get her on down the road as well.
Yeah, Flavia's doing it. She's doing so good. So, yeah, she'd be happy to jump on, too.
And that'd be awesome. And that last point you brought about mindset is huge, because if you have that on point, that drive, it filters onto your fitness, but also to your business, your lifestyle, your relationships, friendships, and all those different aspects of life. So that's some great ending information right there from Vince, guys. So again, thanks for coming on our show, the Ergogenic Podcast here, Vince.
Thank you.
And our listeners, if you're listening to this, please go check out the links Vince just talked about here and give them a look-see there. And thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next episode.
Peace out.